This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, live in the Matt Black Kia Studios, hanging out with you a Thursday leading up to Sixers basketball coming up at the top of the hour, Sixers and Mavs. It really is a great matchup today on 97.3 ESPN. Luka and the Mavs come to town. And, of course, Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid and company are back from their Tampa Bay twofer down in Florida. Of course, Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk with Paul Hudrick, who's live at the center at 6:20 tonight. We'll get the latest from him, what the Sixers are up to tonight, what Doc Rivers had to say, and more as we look ahead to this game tonight. Of course, we always take your text messages. 609-403-0973 is the text board. Also, if you're watching the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, of course, you can get involved as well with your comments as well heading into the game tonight, whether it's Eagles, Sixers, whatever it may be. We talk about on the show. You get into conversation. 97.3 ESPN, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show live in the Matt Black Kia Studios here on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Matt Black Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Before we get into the Sixers stuff, I did want to get to some of the Eagles and the NFL stuff that have come down today. If you didn't see the article on our website at 973ESPN.com, another mock draft has popped off, and another mock draft is projecting the Eagles to get to Jamar Chase. Now, we are basically 2 months away from the draft, so I'm not putting a ton of stock in any of these mocks. It's more so an exercise in what the most current information is. But what I will say to you is I don't think it's a coincidence that more and more people are looking at the offensive side of the ball when it comes to this football team. You have an offensive coach you just hired. You have a situation where you have a young quarterback who is expected to be the starter next year. Why not surround them with as much offensive firepower as possible? Why not give them as many weapons as humanly possible? And listen, I've said it before, I would personally go cornerback. I would go Patrick Surtain. But I'm not against going for more. I'm not against going all in on like a wide receiver, right? Like a Jamar Chase. That's now 2 drafts now that have had Jamar Chase projected to the Eagles. Now, there's a couple of reasons why they're doing it that way, and I completely understand why they're doing it that way. Because what they're rationalizing is that a lot of chatter right now is that the NFL is going to go heavy on the quarterbacks again this year. There's expected to be 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round, or maybe even 5 in the top 20 picks, honestly, depending on where you project Mac Jones and Trey Lance, depending on which, whose draft board you're going off of. But when you think about the Eagles, they can let the draft play out in front of them. They don't have to reach for anyone, because if someone else is going to reach for a quarterback, what happens? Guys are going to drop to you. And I don't mind the idea of Jamar Chase. I think if you're going to draft a receiver, it's Jamar Chase. And nothing against Kyle Pitts, but I think this idea that the Eagles need another receiving tight end is a little overrated. If you can get a primary number 1 X receiver type, I'm down with that. I love that idea, because what you're basically saying is we are not going to risk hoping all the receivers who are on this roster work out. What you're saying is we are getting the best receiver in the draft because we know that that guy can come in here and do something. Don't forget, for all the people who were enamored with Justin Jefferson this past year, there is no Justin Jefferson without Jamar Chase. Period. Jamar Chase was getting a lot of coverages at LSU. He was the number 1 receiver on that team. Jefferson may have the most gaudy stats, but Chase was by far the best receiver. Jamar Chase was in the draft last year. He would have been drafted ahead of both Jefferson and Rager and CeeDee Lamb easily. It would have been Chase, it would have been Judy, and it would have been Ruggs. Those would have been the top 3 receivers. That's how good this guy is. Don't get it twisted. This is a talented receiver. If you can get a receiver of this caliber, in my opinion, you go do it. You don't waste time. I understand the reasoning. Offensive-minded coach. And look at the receivers that Sirianni has worked with over the years. He was in San Diego / Los Angeles coaching up Keenan Allen and Tyrell Williams. He was in Indianapolis with guys like T.Y. Hilton and Michael Pittman and Pascal and all those guys with the Colts. He has coached up a lot of very interesting and talented receivers. And I don't think we can undersell the reality that Chase makes a lot of sense for the Eagles. That's how I look at it. I just think that it makes a lot of sense. Now, if Chase isn't there, anybody who listens to me knows I'm not a huge believer in drafting Devonta Smith, okay? I know that I'm not in the majority in this situation. I know I'm in the minority in this opinion, but it's just how I feel. Anybody who's that lean and that thin, and you put him on a football field, I'm concerned. He is lighter and skinnier than Deshaun Jackson. He is lighter and skinnier than almost any receiver who's ever been drafted in the first round in the last 20 years. He's tiny in terms of his frame. He needs to put on a good 15 to 20 pounds of muscle in the next couple of years because his legs are just tiny. And if someone hits him hard enough, those legs are going to snap like toothpicks. Don't forget, he would not weigh in at the combine. I'm sorry, at the senior week. He refused. He wouldn't do the measurables. So if you're going to go with receiver, it's Jamar Chase or else for me. I like the idea of Jamar Chase, but if you're not going to go with a receiver, like I said before, I'm going defense. I'm going Patrick Surtain. I'm going the superstar caliber defender like a Micah Parsons. I'm going somebody on defense. I'm not going to overreach or try too hard for offense. So again, full details of the mock draft over at 973ESPN.com. And the other thing is, you want to build around the offense because you have a young quarterback coming in here. Look, Jalen Hurts, one of the problems he had this past year was there were a bunch of times that he had to throw the ball away. His completion percentage would actually be a lot higher if you took out all of the throwaways. There were multiple times this past year where he would drop back to pass, and the receiver was either not open or didn't run the wrong route. To me, I can't hold that against him. So people are so enamored with stats sometimes, they didn't watch the game. They didn't realize that the kid had 5 or 6 throwaways. So I need to see them build as much offense around him as possible. Get more receivers. Draft a running back in the mid to late rounds. All right? Get multiple receivers in the draft like you did last year. Draft some offensive line depth in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th rounds. As I said before, I'll say it again. Give Jalen Hurts as many times to succeed or fail as humanly possible. And then you actually have an honest assessment of the young man. 609-403-0973 is the text board. 609-403-0973. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We can watch the show on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 973 ESPN. Still to come, Paul Hudrick, our 973 Sixers Insider, joins us live from the Wells Fargo Center coming up just about 10 minutes from now. Sixers versus Mavs tonight at 7 p.m. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. A couple of you guys watching on Facebook at 973 ESPN. Dominic chimes in on the Facebook watching feed, says, I would trade the 6 pick. Stockpile assets, says Dominic. Next year, they'll be 2-15. Get the first overall pick and have a foundation for the next 6 to 7 years. First of all, Dominic, I like your idea of stockpiling assets. Because in the draft, it really is like playing the lottery. You really don't know how good or bad some of these guys are going to be until they actually get on the football field. A lot of guys look great in college, and they just can't cut it in the NFL for a variety of reasons. So I like your idea of trading back. I think it's a smart move. I personally would do it. I would definitely consider. Look, here's an idea. What if you traded back the 6th pick, you get somebody else's high second-round picks, and then you trade back into the first round? So you go walk out of there with 2 first-round picks, one in maybe like the high teens, and then one in late in the first round. Guess what? That might actually be a better scenario than just having the 6th pick. Now, I do disagree with the 2 and 15. I think that your perspective on the roster and their talent is a little bit jaded. Here's why. They had so many injuries this year. The only way you're going 2 and 15 is if you have all of those injuries again. And one of those injuries was Jason Peters. I don't think he's back next year. One of those injuries was Zach Ertz. I think he's gone. He's not coming back. So Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, they're cut. They're gone. So when you look at the roster, some of the reasons why you had the rough season you did was because of injuries. If you cut those injuries in half and you have Kelsey, Brooks, Lane Johnson for the majority of the year, I don't see you going 2 and 15. You're at least winning 6 games with a healthy or mostly healthy offensive line. Also, Sirianni has a history of using running backs in productive ways, whether it was the Chargers when they had guys, remember it was Michael Turner and Ryan Matthews and Austin Eckler later on, and in Indianapolis, they had Jonathan Taylor last year, and the year before, it was the combination of guys like Naheem Hines and all those running backs back there. So I think this offense is going to function better under Sirianni. And I think that should at least win you a couple more games. If this year is basically a 4-win season, for all intents and purposes, I think that having a quarterback that doesn't turn the ball over 100 times and a healthier team, at least a little bit more, will get you to about 6-7 wins. Dominic, thanks for watching the show on Facebook. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. Of course, another message here on the 97.3 ESPN Facebook feed. Chris chimes in and says, Tobias Harris got robbed of the All-Star nomination this year. He deserves to make it, deserves to have made it this year. Listen, I'm with you. I was on the Tobias Harris should be an All-Star camp, but I thought Mike Yellen and Hunter Brody brought up a good point earlier on the Sports Bash. It's not like somebody got in ahead of him that's egregious. So on one hand, you're like, yes, he should be an all-star. There are many years where teams, like, if Chris Middleton would have gotten the all-star team this year instead of Tobias, then I would have been like, that's ridiculous. But Julius Randle is having a monster season with the Knicks. I can't hate on him for that. So should he have been an all-star? Absolutely. I agree. But am I going to sit here and say he was robbed? I'm starting to soften on that position. For as hard as I was pounding the table for Tobias Harris to get on the All-Star team, I don't know if he was robbed because I feel like everyone who got on the team is deserving. So, you know what? I'm with you on they should have been an All-Star, but I think we need to realize that the guys who are on the team are all very deserving. Josh Hennig here in the Matt Black Kia Studios on 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, still to come, Paul Hudrick live from the center coming up in about 6 minutes from now. We'll get more into the Sixers as well. Shout out to Paul watching on Facebook. Yes, Paul, I don't sleep at the radio station. I do work a lot, but I appreciate you watching and listening to the station. I don't sleep here, though. That would be a little ridiculous. There's no shower here. I need a shower. I need to go home. Paul goes on to ask, should the Sixers make a run at Oladipo? That's a very interesting name because you can trade for him. He is available. He's an interesting piece because he would definitely be an upgrade, in my opinion at least, over Danny Green. Look, I'm not a fan of moving on from Danny Green because I think he brings something to the locker room in terms of leadership and a veteran. But if you're going to get a guy like Oladipo, it might be worth it. Now, the problem with Oladipo is he's had a lot of injuries. He has trouble staying healthy. And while he makes less money than Kyle Lowry, and he's younger than Kyle Lowry, the injury history does concern me. He does have a lot of, serious and then nagging, and he has trouble staying on the court. Remember, he's only played 12 games this year with the Rockets. So it's not like he's putting up like crazy great numbers. He's solid. He's good. I think that he's an all-star caliber player for sure. He's a very good defender. He's an upgrade over Danny Green. So if that's the reason why you get Oladipo to upgrade over Danny Green, listen, Paul, I'm with you. But I'm not giving up a ton for him. Like I'm not going to give up a crazy amount for him. And listen, maybe you go out and get Oladipo and PJ Tucker. Maybe you call the Rockets and say, give me Oladipo, give me Tucker. I'll give you Danny Green, Poirier, and a couple other contracts. Maybe you throw in there Ferguson's contract. Maybe you throw in there like a draft pick just to get those guys out of there. So if that's what you're doing, I'm on board with it, Paul. But if you're just getting Oladipo, it's definitely an option. I'm not against it. I just don't know what's going to happen because remember the reports were that the Rockets weren't interested in dealing with the Sixers. So we'll see about that. We'll get into more of the Sixers coming up next. Paul Hudrick here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig live in the Matt Black Kia Studios, hanging out with you, leading up to Sixers basketball at 7 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN. And don't forget our great Sixers coverage from Paul Hudrick, Kevin McCormick, and Jason Blevins. All three of them covering Sixers for us over at 97.3 ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. I'll get to more of your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the hour. But next, our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick, here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we got Sixers basketball coming up tonight. And joining us right now, live from the center, our Sixers insider, Paul Hudrick, joins the show right now here on 97.3 ESPN. The Sixers take on the Mavs tonight. Of course, it is one of the major primetime games of the schedule tonight on TNT. Paul, how you doing up there?
I'm living, man. It's good to be back in the arena, and Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons both warming up right out in front of me. And Luka Doncic on the other side, so it should be a fun one tonight.
So let's get into some of the details with this game tonight before we get to anything else. First of all, obviously the Sixers are back from the Toronto trip. So what do you expect to see from them now that they're back in the home confines? Because, we know this team always seems to play better at home than anywhere else.
Yeah, and this it's not quite the same opponent, right? I mean, Toronto just does what Nick Nurse and his scheme and what he's able to do and how he's able to just take the ball out of Joel Embiid's hands. They do it better than anyone by far. So I expect Joel Embiid to maybe get loose a little bit tonight, but at the same time, it's a pretty good coach you're facing tonight. And Rick Carlisle is a guy who's been around the block and who's dealt with dominant big men in the past. So I do expect them to be pretty aggressive. They've shown plenty of zone against the Sixers in the past, so I'd expect to maybe see some of that. And then you also have a couple former Sixers that are probably itching to get back at their former team with Trey Burke and Josh Richardson. So I would imagine they're going to be hungry tonight and wanting to prove something. So I do think the Sixers, I could see Joel Embiid bouncing back a little bit. And, maybe the whole team in general, I could see the offense just being a little bit better going up against a team like Dallas as opposed to what they encountered against Toronto.
Now, you mentioned about Embiid. We know no Porzingis for tonight for the Mavs. So how does that impact what the Mavs can do against Embiid, considering that it's not like Dallas has a ton of size down there?
Right. I mean, so I imagine that Dallas is going to be really aggressive with double teams. Even with Porzingis, I still think they would have been really aggressive with double teams because that's not really Porzingis' game. He's not a guy who's going to, post people up or, defend a lot on the block. It's not really his style. So, I mean, I think no matter if he played or not, I was expecting heavy double teams, heavy triple teams. They're going to throw everything that he can handle. I mean, that's what Toronto is kind of given the blueprint. I don't think every team can execute it as well as Toronto, but I do expect that Dallas is going to come at him hard And it's not just going to be him against Dwight Powell or him against Maxi Kleber. It's going to be him against the entire Dallas Mavericks 5 that are out on the floor.
Paul Hudrick joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Sixers versus Mavericks tonight. Tom McGinnis on the call at the top of the hour here on 97.3 ESPN. Paul live at the center tonight for Sixers versus Mavs. Doc spoke before the game today. Looks like Seth Curry is good to go. It seemed like the way Doc described it, though, Paul, that there's no minute restriction or anything with him. So it seems like it's a pretty clean bill of health.
Yeah, from what he's kind of been dealing with an ankle for the last couple of weeks. Even before he got his positive COVID test, he was questionable that night with the ankle. So it's something that's been bothering him on and off, I think, for a little bit here. But yeah, as far as we know, he is going to go. I would assume he's in the starting lineup. And he's another guy. Look, he's playing his old team as well, so I'm sure he's itching to get out there and prove a little something as well. And the Sixers got such a big boost from Furkan Korkmaz the other night simply because he was hitting shots. And you see Seth Curry can do that at a more consistent level. So, having a guy like that in the lineup, and again, another ball handler, I think is huge. His ability to run the pick and roll with Ben, or the DHOs with Ben and Joel, are big. So I would expect Seth Curry, to play tonight. And, if he's going to have any ill effects, we'll see. But I expect him to be a big part of this offense tonight and obviously going forward.
Obviously, another topic that came up in Doc's presser today, meeting with the media with, was Tobias Harris. Obviously, he did not make the All-Star team. I know people like me were pounding the table thinking he should, but I kind of have to agree with some people say, Paul, that, it's not like he got robbed. It's not like, anybody who made the team is anybody egregious. But I did like the fact that, Doc stuck by his guns. He said, look, there should have been 3 guys who made this All-Star team. And, I still stand behind my belief that Tobias Harris is an all-star caliber player in this league.
I would agree. He's having an all-star caliber season without a doubt. When you look at his numbers and what he's added to this team, which has the best record in Eastern Conference, he's so durable. He doesn't miss games. Doc Rivers pointed to his professionalism pregame, which no one can question that either. He is a leader. He has helped young guys on this team tremendously, most notably Matisse Thybulle, but really every young guy on this team. He is a leader, and that's a big part of it too. And I just think the improvement he's shown, especially on the defensive end, I think all those things, I think that's why he's having an all-star level season. I do tend to agree, Josh, that, snub is probably too strong of a term, but I do think he should have made it. The guy, and it's, not to pick on any players, but I kind of think he should have made it over Vucevic. The Orlando Magic has a 14th best record in Eastern Conference. Sure, Vucevic's numbers are up, but it's mostly a result of injuries and the team not being very good. So I think when, it's like the context of it, when you look at Tobias Harris and his role on the team and how well he is playing it and at the level he is playing, I think he should have gotten a nod. It's disappointing. Like I said, I'm not going to go as far as to call it a snub, but I do believe he should have made it.
Yeah, and let's think about it this way. It might be a blessing in disguise because, maybe it adds a little extra fuel to the team to be like, look, we should have had 3 guys. We only had 2. Meanwhile, the Nets have 3 guys almost by default. So it's kind of like, it's one of those deals where, maybe you could turn around and use that as a little motivation in the locker room for the rest of the year.
For sure. I mean, we kind of, we've seen that kind of in the past with Ben Simmons, the one year where he, his rookie year, I believe it was, where he thought he should have made it. He didn't. And then he went on a tear and played phenomenal for the rest of the season. So it definitely does happen. Danny Green started his availability with us earlier during the shoot-around saying we should have had 3 All-Stars. So, to your point with the team, and then Tobias himself, he recently did a one-on-one with Sam Amick of The Athletic, where he admitted, I get PO'd when I see that people don't really put me in that category. They don't consider the Sixers as having 2 stars, or 3 stars. They consider them only having 2. They don't put me in that category. So I do think he's not numb to it. He definitely knows it. He definitely feels like he should have got in. He definitely wasn't pleased. You saw his post on Twitter and Instagram. He was not thrilled with not getting picked. So I do expect a very hungry Tobias Harris, not just now, but for the rest of the season. And to your point, these are the kind of things that do fuel teams, especially for a guy like Tobias, who, as I mentioned, is a leader and a guy that his teammates really love and respect.
Of course, Tobias Harris has 13 games this year with at least 20 points and 7 rebounds this year for the 76ers. Paul Hudrick live at the center, joining us ahead of Sixers versus Mavs. The action starts at 7 p.m. right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Speaking of being contenders, Paul, obviously a lot of rumors swirling around it. It seems like this Kyle Lowry stuff is actually starting to pick up a little bit of steam after Keith Pompey's report today. But I know you were talking not just on your Coming In for a Landing podcast, but on yesterday on Inside the Sixers with Mike Gill and Hunter Brody about, listen, making the numbers work is not easy. So now, listen, obviously people can get creative. I have full confidence Daryl Moore, if he really wanted to get Kyle Lowry, he'd find a way. But just kind of give the audience a little bit more details about what are some of the obstacles to actually make that deal happen.
Right. So I kind of misspoke on the Sports Bash yesterday, but you can include, like, the only young player that you could theoretically include would be Tyrese Maxey because of the salary, because of Kyle Lowry's $30 million salary. It would have to be Danny Green, Mike Scott, Terrence Ferguson, and then the fourth guy could be Maxey. That is the only way you can include a young guy in that deal. That's probably not going to be enough to get it done. Toronto probably is also going to want to pick out of you. So I guess it kind of matters, what is Daryl Morey's walking away point? Is Tyrese Maxey in a 1? Is that enough? Is that too much? Does Toronto want multiple ones? I think that's all out there. It's all a possibility. I will say that Keith Pompey's report does make it seem a little more credible that he could be moved, because to me, when I saw Kyle Lowry's name out there, my first thought was, why on earth would Toronto do this? They're in the playoffs as of right now. They have a pretty good team. There's a rumor they were looking to add Andre Drummond and all that. But then you see in Keith's report that it's actually Kyle who might want to go to a team that gives him a better chance of winning this year and maybe competing for a championship. So when you keep that in mind, I do think that lends itself to maybe this being a little bit more plausible and possible that he could be, he could be a target for the Sixers and he could want to come here. They're certainly, it's not going to be easy. If they were to pull it off, they're probably going to get rid of a player that a lot of fans probably like. And that's just the reality of making trades in the NBA. But at the same time, a guy like Lowry, to put him in the starting 5, I think it could put this team on a completely different level. And I do think, getting a guy like him, and then, you still have some pieces left to improve the bench. If you do all that, you have a really good shot at coming out of the Eastern Conference as champions.
Yeah, and also, and I'm not trying to get too complicated with this, but what about the possibility of getting a third team involved? We've seen 3-team trades all the time to make the numbers work, and maybe that's a way the Sixers can also replenish the bench. And maybe they send a couple guys to Toronto, a couple guys somewhere else. I had someone message me earlier asking about the Sixers acquiring Oladipo. I know Kevin McCormick talked to you about maybe PJ Tucker. Maybe Houston is that team where you walk away with Lowry, Tucker, and Oladipo, just throwing out a scenario, and you kind of overhaul that bench a little bit. We've seen crazier things happen in the NBA.
Yeah, I would say, if you make a move for Lowry, like I said, it doesn't stop you from still improving the bench a great deal. You could still, you still have the trade exception at, around $8 million from the Al Horford deal. So that's enough to get a PJ Tucker if you wanted to. Then you still have the taxpayer mid-level exception, which you could use on a buyout candidate. So whether that's, a guy like JJ Redick or another veteran on another team that asks for a buyout that you could possibly acquire. So I would say that, getting Kyle Lowry, it would take a lot. You're going to have to give up a lot to get him, but I don't think it would completely deplete the assets to where they wouldn't still be able to improve the bench a great deal. PJ Tucker's a guy I love. I think he'd be a great fit. But there's so many other. Nemanja Bjelica from the Kings would be a nice option as a stretch 5. There's been talk of, George Hill of the Thunder or DeLon Wright of the Pistons. There are many ways they can go about improving this bench. So that's why, to me, if you can get a guy like Lowry, you do it. You improve the starting 5, and then you figure out everything else after that.
Now, if they did get Lowry, let's just go down that road for a hot minute, all right? So let's say your starting lineup then would be what? Embiid, Harris, Simmons, Lowry, and Curry, I guess?
Possibly. If you do that move and you start with Curry, your starting backcourt is very small. Kyle Lowry does play much bigger than 6 foot. That's for sure. Because he's so tough and because he's built like a tank and his ability to take charges. He plays much bigger than 6 foot. But the reality is you'd have him and Seth at 6'2", playing in your backcourt. So maybe you you get creative. Maybe you would then maybe start Matisse Thybulle, give you a little bit more defense because you'd have additional offense with Lowry in the lineup. Or maybe you would start Shake Milton at that point, to have a lot of ball handling. And then you're bringing, a guy like Seth Curry off the bench. And I think that could, theoretically possibly solve two problems. Then you're bringing the firepower of Seth Curry off your bench could help your depth. So that's why I think the idea of getting Lowry, it would improve the team on down because it shortens the bench. You have another guy that can play big minutes, that's played in big games, and I just think adding him to that starting five, no matter who the fifth starter would be, whether it's Seth Curry or one of the other options I talked about, I just think you're automatically that much better that it makes it worth it.
I like the idea of Matisse Thybulle because then you basically tell him, Matisse, you don't have to worry about anything except for playing defense. Like, literally the entire rest of the 4 of the 5 starters are out there for offense. One guy's out there. It's almost like when the Spurs had Bruce Bowen down there, and his job was just defense. I mean, Matisse could basically be that role then.
Right, that or, a guy like Andre Roberson, what he did with the Thunder when, they had KD and Russell Westbrook and Ibaka and Harden. They didn't need a guy like Roberson to give them big offensive numbers. They just needed him to play really good defense. So, yeah, I could see 100% see Matisse Thybulle in that kind of role. And then also if you start him, that saves Ben Simmons, from guarding maybe the other team's best perimeter offensive player. Maybe that gives him a little bit of break, saves him some energy, saves him some fouls. So he has them later in the game. Now, when you get to a team like the Nets, I mean, that's just a mismatch nightmare for anyone. But in general, perhaps putting Matisse Thybulle in this scenario in a starting lineup could alleviate some of the defensive responsibilities on Ben Simmons and, make him even more of a roamer too. And maybe, kind of read passing lanes and kind of wreak havoc that way. So, yeah, I think, again, just getting Lowry would present you with so many more options and just make you so much deeper and better that I would think that a move would be worth it.
97.3 ESPN.com, Sixers Insider Paul Hudrick here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Paul Hudrick on Twitter. He's live at the center for Sixers versus Mavs tonight. You can hear all the action at 7 p.m. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. And check out the latest edition of the Coming In for a Landing podcast. Paul, Kevin McCormick, great conversation on there. It's only 30 minutes, so it's a great, nice little listen on maybe your drive going to and from the store or something like that. And as all guests, Paul appeared on the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Paul, great stuff. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right, Josh. Thank you.
Josh Hennig here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, we will be giving you my FanDuel Sportsbook pick of the night coming up in just a bit. Of course, my conversation with Paul Hudrick is being brought to you by Trifecta Therapeutics in Glassboro, South Jersey's premier sports rehabilitation and physical therapy center, treating the pros and the Joes. Visit them online at trifectatherapeutics.com. Proud sponsors of Sixers pregame coverage right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Of course, we will get back to your thoughts on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as you watch the show on 97.3 ESPN. Also, your thoughts at 609-403-0973 on the text board right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Just follow 97.3 ESPN.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, live in the Matt Black Kia studios on 97.3 ESPN. Yes, Matt Black Kia. They want to get you approved today. It's Matt Black Kia on the Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. Of course, Game Night is also being brought to my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. That's right, FanDuel Sportsbook wants to add a little excitement to your sports watching experience. So get the FanDuel Sportsbook app. There's a reason why FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. Their app is simple to use with unique fun bet types like same-game parlays. So you get a massive payout on a small bet and exclusive promotions with an enhanced odds boost on the biggest events like the Sixers-Mavs game tonight. That's right. And if you win, you can get your winnings safely as little as 24 hours. Right now, FanDuel is letting you place your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. That's right. Risk-free bet up to $1,000. Just place a bet on any game and FanDuel will refund you up to $1,000 back if you don't win your first bet. No strings attached. Just place the bet. If you win, you keep the cash. If you lose, you get $1,000 cash back in site credit. If you've never tried FanDuel Sportsbook, what are you waiting for? Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and use my promo code Hennig when you sign up for a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER for the full terms and conditions. Go to sportsbook.fanduel.com. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you can chime into the show at 609-403-0973 is the text board, or you can comment on the live stream as you are watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We'll get to my FanDuel Sportsbook pick in just about 7 minutes from now. But first, I want to get back to some of your comments on here. We had a comment, Nisty commented over on Twitter watching the show, says, do we see Embiid continue his MVP domination tonight? I think you do, because Paul Hudrick pointed out earlier, it's not like the Mavs have a ton of options when it comes to playing defense. They're just not that kind of team, all right? The Mavs are just not a good defensive team, all right? Let's be realistic. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I got to be honest with you. For as talented as Luka Doncic is, he leads the team in every significant category statistically this year. Points per game, rebounds per game, assists per game. It literally is Luka Doncic and company this year. And the Mavs defense is not great. They're allowing almost 114 points per game. They're just not a good defense. And with that being understood, they're 15-15 for a reason. And I think that Joel Embiid can have a huge game tonight, which is why that will have to do with one of my FanDuel Sportsbook picks coming up in just a bit. Of course, 609-403-0973 is the text putting on the conversation. As you comment on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter as you watch the show here on 97.3 ESPN. I wanted to go back to a comment made a little bit earlier because Dominic commented on the stream. I want to touch on one more point from Dominic's message earlier on Facebook because he talked about trading back the 6th pick to stockpile assets. Listen, no matter what you think of the Eagles team next year, I think Dominic makes an excellent point here that I want to drive home again. When you trade back with a pick, you're putting yourself in an opportunity to take more shots at having success at getting those draft picks. And that's a great point by Dominic because I don't think we've talked enough about that. You know, the mock drafts are not exciting or sexy or cool or fun when you go out there and you're thinking, oh, well, we'll just stay at the 6. Or everyone wants to trade up, right? Everyone wants to trade up to get a pick. But trading back is what smart teams do, right? Smart teams go into situations and they say, we know if we get more opportunities, okay, more shots at the pie, we have a chance to really do something here. And I think that that's an underrated aspect when it comes to building a team. When you build a team, you put yourself in a position to have certain scenarios go your way. And one of those scenarios is to go in there and, just kind of try to figure out what makes sense, right? Try to go in there and try to figure out what is the best way for you to build out your roster, to flesh out your roster, to put yourself in position to be successful. And I think that when you trade back, it's an overlooked aspect of having success. An underlooked thing is if you have a ton of draft picks, you have more opportunities to not mess up the process because now it goes from being just, the 6th pick to now potentially walking away with 2 first-round picks. Remember, you could trade back, you could get a pick, and then you could move on. Move back up into the first round. Move back up in the second round. If you have enough picks, you can just move up and down all the draft. We know Howie Roseman loves to make trades. So good call there by Dominic watching over on Facebook at 973 ESPN. Over on the text board at 609-403-0973, texter chimed in and says, Joel Embiid, triple-double tonight, book it in all caps, says the texter on the text board. All caps, book it. Yeah, he's not shy about that. Book it, all caps. Now, I'm not going to guarantee you Embiid gets a triple-double, but I will tell you one of my picks for tonight is Joel Embiid, the combination of points, rebounds, and assists over 46.5. Yes, that's one of my FanDuel Sportsbook picks for the night. Joel Embiid over 46.5 points, rebounds, and assists. And when you think about it, that's not a hard number to achieve when you really break it down. Because if Embiid goes out there and let's say he has 30 points and he has 10 rebounds, Embiid getting 7 assists isn't crazy. He's had some high assist nights. I think Embiid gets more than 30 points. I wouldn't be surprised if Embiid goes out there, has 35 points and 10 rebounds and maybe 5 assists or 3 or 4 assists. You're still hitting that over. So one of my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the night are 46.5. Now, if he gets a double-double like the texter says over here, well, you're going to hit that 46.5 really easily. That's for sure. So the texter and I are kind of simpatico here. We're both thinking on the same page here. Joel Embiid is probably going to have a big night back at the center tonight. Of course, Tom McGinnis calling all the action coming up here on 97.3 ESPN. My other FanDuel Sportsbook pick of the night. Listen, I know that there's some people who don't agree with this pick, and that's fine. I'm not going to sit here and bemoan and cry anything. But the Kings-Knicks game, I can't follow the trend. I can't follow everybody. I know that there are some quote-unquote experts out there who are saying go against that over-under, go under. I know that 60% of the public is betting the under right now, but I'm going against everybody. I'm going the over, and here's why. All right, and listen, maybe I'm a little ridiculous to go down this path, but hear me out for a second. The Kings are one of the worst defenses in the NBA. They're allowing 120 points per game. Now, the Knicks are not a great offense, but they have scored over 100 points in 4 of their last 5 games. Also, the Kings are scoring themselves 114 points per game. The Knicks are actually allowing almost the same exact amount of points for and points against in every game this year. They're almost exactly 103 for and 103 against. The Kings are a team that shoots just under 50% from the field. The Knicks are a very good rebounding team. I think this could be a very competitive game. And I think that when you look at the injury report, it's not like the Knicks have anybody who's really significant who's not going to play tonight. You still have all your main firepower options. And remember, no Jabari Parker, no Hassan Whiteside for the Kings. So more opportunities for De'Aaron Fox, for Buddy Hield, for Harrison Barnes to go out there and just put up shots and get a bunch of buckets. So I do think this game is going to hit the over 226 tonight. Of course, those are my FanDuel Sportsbook picks for the night. We went 2-0 last night on the pick, so it's always fun to get a couple wins under our belt, give you a little bit of money in your pocket. Again, FanDuel Sportsbook, promo code Hennig. When you sign up, that's promo code HENNIG with FanDuel Sportsbook when you sign up. Again, Sixers coming up next year on 97.3 ESPN. We are back to the normal lineup for the Sixers. Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, Danny Green, Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid. The starters only have one loss when they are starting together this season. Meanwhile, for the Mavs tonight, obviously Luka Doncic, former Sixer Josh Richardson. How about former Sixer Boban Marjanovic? Yeah, Bobby. He's starting tonight. Maxi Kleber is going to play for them, and then Dorian Finney-Smith. Also, I do think the Sixers win this game I think Luka will keep it close for the Mavs, but I think the Sixers pull away. Think about it. Dorian Finney-Smith, Boban Marjanovic, they're not high-volume scorers. Neither is Josh Richardson. Kleber's a streaky guy at this point in his career. So it's Luka or else for that team. Thanks to Paul Hudrick for joining the show live from the center. Of course, we are going live up to the center in just about 5 minutes from now. Tom McGinnis on the call right here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Catch full Sixers coverage over at 97.3 ESPN.com. We have the best Sixers coverage in not just South Jersey, on planet Earth. We got Paul Hudrick, Kevin McCormick, Jason Blevins, the best Sixers coverage right there at 97.3 ESPN.com and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll catch you tomorrow.